we at Digital Catapult, we are set up by the British government to support the companies across the country to embrace the benefits of advanced digital technologies. So we're here to help move the market forward rather than to compete with it. And my work is to look after what we do in food and drink. So we've been asked to talk about a program that we are in the process of kind of organizing people around and helping to establish, called Feed UK. Feed UK is an initiative of the Food and Drink Sector Council. So it's led by industry, it's designed by and for industry, and it's aimed to be owned by industry going forward. One of the things that we're looking at in the program is to understand how we can best optimize the food system on a national scale. So some big goals, but if we've got a huge amount of waste at the moment in the food system. We're wasting 9.5 million tons just in the UK alone. And obviously, I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the statistics around food waste. But in essence, one of the things that we need to be able to do is really improve the efficiency of converting energy from the sun to the stomach to feed our growing population. And what we need to be able to, in order to kind of do this and to have an optimal food system, we need to really understand how information needs to flow effectively across the system. Because at the moment, products and money are wasted because information flows ineffectively across the food system. And today, society and the environment are left picking up the tab. We have a massively fragmented food system with very limited interoperability. There's limited data sharing, and collaboration is based on kind of contractual obligations and commercial power. But there is an imperfect distribution of information across the system, and that means that we are much less effective than we could be. It is a very complex and interdependent system, but what we've started to prove out at the moment through some of the programs we're doing is unleashing between 10 to 30% cost savings when you start to have efficient energy information flow across an end-to-end supply chain. So Feed UK is envisaged to be a 4-year program, as I said, but it's an initiative of the Food and Drink Sector Council. And what it aims to do is to provide oversight of the food system to enable multiple stakeholders to understand and manage their role and this wider system. So when we talk about the food system, obviously we have the food chain at the core. So we have from inputs, agriculture, distribution, processing, food retail and service, and then consumption, with the whole kind of waste and infrastructure, the waste infrastructure system around it, and research and technology community. And this is really the core of the food chain at the center here. But whenever looking at any system, we need to look at the full boundaries of the system. And for the purposes of our work, we're using this model from the University of London, where we're looking at all of the wider impacts from health, environment, society, economy, and of course politics, so that we can understand the stresses and drivers of the food system beyond the food chain itself. So Feed UK is aiming to be a national innovation program looking at unlocking around £45 million to drive out this national innovation program, to create a core kind of digital infrastructure and self-sustaining governance business model to help drive the goals of the program forward. It's very much about framing British food in the global context, and to provide a deep overview of the system in order to ensure that we understand the flows of goods and money across the food system, ultimately being able to build greater resilience for the food system. We've seen that already. There's much of the system has already been kind of mapped. There's a large amount of data that is already digitalized across the food system, but much of it is very siloed. So people are not really sharing this data between different entities, and we need to be able to find a way to unlock the data flow. We have, as you see here, this is kind of very complex environment, and the first phase of the program will be to look at how we interconnect different all of these different components. And so there'll be a big deep dive discovery phase during the first kickoff elements of the program. So the way it can work for companies is, first of all, we need to be able to connect the silos. So any node, any factory, any production environment needs to be able to digitize a certain element of their processes to be able to plug into Feed UK. So this helps to connect the silos, and that initial process of digitalizing some of their processes will derive some efficiency gains within the factory. Secondly, we will then move towards a more systems level visibility, where we start to see more networks of companies participating in the system, who all benefit from that initial process optimization from digitizing some of their processes. And then that would then provide greater insight from across networks. So we start to understand bullwhip effect and better management of inventory, benchmarking between different entities and so on, all providing operational benefits back to the companies as they onboard. And then as data starts to flow effectively in this system here, we can start to look at developing new services that can be added on to the wider core operational benefits. Start looking at perfecting the level of risk in a transaction, understanding product flows so that we can better look at insurance or cost of finance. And all of these are continuing adding value to the data in the wider system. These operational benefits then all feed into kind of the core incentives for people to adopt Feed UK. So there's no reason why the stick is going to motivate people to participate. This has to be a financial benefit in order to participate in the system. And the focus here will be very much looking at increasing productivity, delivering net zero, and helping the system to become more resilient and responsive to shock. That would then derive, once there's sufficient data flowing in the system, we then have sufficient information to look at risk measurement and management. Increasing public trust through greater transparency, inclusivity, more transparent national statistics and so on. Enabling government and relevant entities with the who earn access or are provided access by the community to the data to drive this improved data-driven policy. So we actually really understand the impacts of policy decisions. And then unleashing a whole new range of research and innovation from the community based on the statistic or based on the data that is we've generated. And all of this to drive greater productivity, resilience, sustainability, and wellness across the UK food system. This is a bit of a complex diagram, but ultimately there's some core data infrastructure and digital commons which we intended to be invested in in the next round of the comprehensive spending review, and that will kind of create national digital infrastructure that would then enable us to do the work that we're planning. We need to be able to connect with the National Digital Twin Program, the National Food Strategy, and then there's a whole raft of new bills, Environment Bill, Agricultural Bill, that are coming in. Feed UK would then be able to deliver the kind of core infrastructure to be able to monitor and evaluate progress against these bills and national programs. And ultimately, Feed UK's kind of core functionality would be in the green box, which is ultimately this data infrastructure to enable the collection of high quality available data, which would then be able to be better visualized and analyzed and providing these kind of simulation and modeling tools. Ultimately, we're looking at the infrastructure to collect, exchange, and leverage high quality data. And then the red bit is moving towards the marketplace, where once we lock this data, then the market can move forward and deliver greater value to it. We're looking at potentially the first case being in dairy, looking across the end-to-end dairy system. And to date, the program has been delivered by the Food and Drink Sector Council. We've got a large number of research and technology organizations convened. Many people from across over 300 organizations have participated in different briefing sessions. And we've done a lot of work behind the scenes, lining things up with government policy, organizational leadership, and we work with DEFRA to submit a proposal in as part of the comprehensive spending review. But due to the delays of the comprehensive spending review, we're now pushing the program out until that funding is reconfirmed. The next key phase that we're looking at is going to be running a series of workshops across all these different stakeholder groups. And the core guiding principles are very much around collaboration. So co-creation, experimentation, and sustainability being core driving components, and how we connect and link into the Sustainable Development Goals is crucial. The benefits very much are driven around commercial gains and productivity, and also risk mitigation around looking at hotspot monitoring and so on. The key thing really is, how do we create a digital infrastructure that would enable UK food and drink sector to start to lead the world in terms of quality, integrity, and resilience. And the whole program is led by so far led by Judith Batchelor, who's been running things from the Food and Drink Sector Council. She leads the innovation working group for that. And again, it's just another great example of where we have women leadership across the food sector. We can really start to drive a significant change and celebrate it on days like today. So yes, that's a general overview of Feed UK. The program is, as I mentioned, delayed due to the comprehensive spending review, but there's still quite a significant amount of activity. And if anybody would like to be in touch about this, please don't hesitate. And obviously here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Ben. What are the challenges with addressing food security and food quality, as you see it?
Well, so food security and food quality. I mean, from a perspective of Feed UK and what I was just talking about, one of the key challenges in terms of food security is just the reliance that we have on food internationally. And so obviously one is kind of cross-border trade at the moment. It's very, very complicated for companies to maintain the administration of certification that they're dealing with in the current environment. So that is a challenge in terms of product flow into the country. But I'd say the biggest challenges really are around the climate change that is coming. We've already seen challenges in Africa with locust swarms and so on, really damaging the security over there. And what we're going to start to see is more complex kind of environments for crop production. So I'd say, I think I'm probably rabbiting a bit, but I'd say probably the most important thing at the moment from our perspective is better understanding of the data that we're seeing coming out of kind of food production environments, so that we can understand more effectively how we need to be able to mitigate changes to climate in order to improve productivity on farm. And the more data, the better data that we can have on farming, the more we can rely on precision agriculture rather than chemical agriculture. And that enables a greater resilience to the wider food system. I think in terms of quality, I think a lot of it is around the incentives that farms are given to drive quality in food. And at the moment, we obviously have a kind of an economic model that doesn't support true agricultural systems or resilient agricultural systems. Farmers are incentivized to deplete the soil and in many cases to pollute the water systems. What we need is a economic model that enables farmers to be able to be to look after the natural capital that we have around us. So from my side, it's about high quality data and effective incentives will be able to build resilience around food security and quality.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Just one last question then for Ben. How are the current changes in land management in the UK likely to improve food sustainability?
That's a great question. There's a huge amount of changes that come in the UK agricultural sector, and I'd say obviously there are incentives for farmers who are less focused on productivity to leave agriculture, and so there's going to be a raft of incentives on that side. I think in general, if we pull back a little bit, what it's actually what they're aiming on doing is obviously integrating public good for public for public money, and one of the big changes that we're going to start to see is looking at land about whether is it more productive to make food or to sequester carbon, and there's going to be a massive shift towards that. So agriculture is going to be as much around developing and generating ecosystem services as it is around producing food, and how that is managed is going to be very, very delicate. Will need to be very delicate because there's rural communities that have been built up over, for as long as we've been here, that are based on certain values, and there is a risk that these communities could be have changed quite dramatically. So I think in terms of, it depends on what we mean by sustainability. Environmental sustainability, yes, there's a massive focus that's going to be put on that. In terms of social sustainability, obviously there's a lot of small print that needs to be understood to see how that can impact. But it's undeniable that there needs to be a shake-up in agriculture. As I mentioned, the incentives that are deployed across the system at the moment are very extractive. And we need to be able to have new systems that focus on regenerative approaches to agriculture. And hopefully the new changes through the environmental land management system and so on are going to be able to deliver the kind of increase in sustainability on all levels for food. But the big challenge is how do we monitor and evaluate and incentivize performance against this new approach? And this needs to be recognized that food systems and agriculture need high levels of investment to generate the benefit and the quality that we all need. It's just a very complex system. And from our perspective, it's important to bring all of the key voices together to the table, and focus on where data can deliver most value. So hopefully it's going to be excellent for UK food sustainability. And we're still a few years away from it becoming into fruition, but there's basically going to see a massive shift, I think.